Here we've got my instants and sorceries. We'll start up here at the top. We have Consume Spirit and Exsanguinate. These are both good for gaining me life. I like Exsanguinate better because it deals damage to each player, and I gain life from each player. Consume Spirit is also good, but it's more against one-on-one. I run them both because you never know when you can use life. Here I have my Destruction spells, Curse of the Cabal, which I like to suspend and force people to sacrifice if they don't want it to go off. This also allows for some people to slow down their exploding, because if they explode too fast, I'm just going to pick them. We have Black Sun Zenith from the new set. This is really good when you can get lots of mana out. It also takes out those pesky indestructible creatures. We have Damnation, black staple, of course. It's just like Wrath of God. And we have Decree of Pain. Decree of Pain I love because if I use it with Maralen out, I get to draw tons of cards, even though my opponents haven't been able to for the longest while. Here I'm going to move to my Reanimation. We've got Beacon of Unrest. This is really good, black staple. Gruesome Encore. I haven't been able to play with it much, but I like it. It's from the new set. It does, however, exile the creature, and that's a bit of a throwback, especially if it's something I want to reanimate again and again. But it can also be used to exile a creature that I find another player will take back, and I don't want that. Here's Zombify, another good card. Rise from the Grave. Living Death is another black staple. We've got Reanimate. Shrouded Lore. Shrouded Lore is a bit different because while it doesn't reanimate creatures, it brings things back to my hand. I like to use it with Temple Extortion the next turn to try and bring that back. And if I can, then I'll play it again. We've got Ill-Gotten Gains. Ill-Gotten Gains is a really good card, and it's very underplayed, I find, because Ill-Gotten Gains can make a bunch of people discard, and when you use it with Bloodchief Ascension, it increases the amount of damage your opponents take. This also allows me to recur a bunch of spells and bring them all back to my hand, along with any kinds of creatures, and reduce my opponent's hand sizes to 3. Here we've got Temple Extortion, which I use to take extra turns. When used with Wound Reflection, it makes an opponent lose if they want to pay half their life. We have Buried Alive, which I use to bring Geth, Magus of the Coffers, and other creatures to my grave to reanimate them later. I have Sudden Spoiling, a very defensive card. I think it should be a black staple. It makes all my opponent's creatures 0/2s and lose their abilities. It's really great. And of course we have a Dark Ritual. Dark Ritual lets me play Maralen on turn 1, which I find is amazing, because generally if I have it in hand, I'll try and mull down to some lands. That way I don't have to search for lands, and my opponents might have to. It slows them down a lot. And finally we've got one of the combo pieces, Bitter Ordeal. This is a really great card, and I'll explain why it is later in the combo part. But he's really good with all the sacrificing I have in the deck. He allows me to exile target cards from target players' libraries, and has Gravestorm, so I can copy the ability many, many times. Here we have the lands for my deck. We have Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, Cabal Coffers, which when used together can generate me black mana for each land I control. There's Vesuva, which I use to copy the Cabal Coffers. And finally, Deserted Temple. Right now one of my buddies is borrowing it. But Deserted Temple taps for colorless mana, and also one colorless and tap, and it can untap another target land, namely Cabal Coffers, or Vesuva copying the Cabal Coffers, and this will double my mana again. My other non-basic lands, I have Beseiju, who shelters all, good if you don't want your shit countered. Bajuka Bog for graveyard destruction. Strip Mine. I use Strip Mine only because other people use Strip Mine and people run land destruction. Typically, I'm not a big fan of it. The only time I really would see it being used is when I use it if an opponent has an Urborg in play and I want to put my own in. I would use a Strip Mine to destroy the Urborg, but in the end it doesn't really matter. I have Reliquary Tower for no maximum hand size. Leech-Ridden Swamp. While it's not the best card to put in, I find that it's able to deal 1 damage. That's not terrible. 1 damage to each opponent can get brutal after a few turns. I have Shizo, Death Storehouse, to swing with my legendary creatures, typically Maralen. Maze of Ith, to stop some attacks coming in. Phyrexian Tower, which I use to sacrifice my general or other creatures to. As you've seen, there's a lot of creature destruction and sacrificing. This also adds double black to my mana pool. And Safe Haven. I threw in Safe Haven even though I'm not a big fan of the card because it works well with Maralen, because Maralen gets a lot of hate, and so when I use this I can protect her somewhat. And because I run Extraplanar Lens, I also run a bunch of snow-covered swamps that I play with. Finally, my last combo for Maralen is with Bloodchief Ascension. When you use Bloodchief Ascension with Maralen, you can get the counters off in 3 turns. What's fun with that is once the counters are all on her, you can then use it with Ill-Gotten Gains. Ill-Gotten Gains makes all players discard their hands, which will net you 2 life per card. Here are the combos I have for Maralen. One of the mana combos is Magus of the Coffers and Sword of the Parents. If you have 6 mana open and Sword of the Parents is equipped, you can generate infinite black mana by tapping and untapping Magus of the Coffers for black mana equal to the amount of lands you have. So you need, swamps. So you need 6 swamps in play to do this. This combo uses Nim Deathmantle, which is a great card. You use Wurmcoil Engine equipped to it, or you can use Massacre Wurm equipped to it. And as long as you have Ashnodd's Altar in play, you can sacrifice them, and with 2 mana open, you can equip the Nim Deathmantle. What's fun with this and Massacre Wurm is that you can deal -4/-4 to all creatures in play. This can take out indestructible creatures, as well as making your opponents lose life. When used with Wurmcoil Engine, you do the combo once and you get 2 tokens. You can now use one of the tokens and the Wurmcoil Engine to be sacrificed to the Ashnodd's Altar, and constantly re-equipping it with Nim Deathmantle to create infinite tokens. Again, this combo can be added onto with Bitter Ordeal, which allows you to exile someone's library. Because of its infinite combo with Wurmcoil Engine, you can exile everyone's library at once. With this combo, I have Reassembling Skeleton and Ashnodd's Altar. When you sacrifice the Reassembling Skeleton to Ashnodd's Altar, it creates 2 colorless mana. And then when you throw in Bog Initiate, you can filter this colorless mana to black to bring back the Reassembling Skeleton. You can do this an infinite amount of times. It's a self-contained loop. And then what you can do is play Bitter Ordeal. As said in the previous combo, Bitter Ordeal will allow you to exile their libraries thanks to its Gravestorm ability. And as long as that isn't countered, you can kill any players in play. This combo is with Death Render. You use Death Render, which when it's equipped to a creature and the creature dies, you get to put a creature from your hand into play equipped to it. The combo works with Warren Pilferers and Gravedigger, which for the purposes of this combo have the same ability. Whenever it comes into play, you get to return a creature from your graveyard to your hand. What you do is you equip one with Death Render, and then with Altar of Dementia in play, which allows you to sack a creature and mill an opponent, you will create an infinite combo. What happens is you sacrifice one of them, let's say Gravedigger, with Death Render attached, and Warren Pilferers in your hand. Warren Pilferers then gets attached to Death Render. It will then trigger, and Gravedigger will go to your hand. This mills your opponent by 5 for every step of the combo. What you can also do is use my combo piece, Bitter Ordeal, and if you do this enough times, you can exile someone's library, because Bitter Ordeal has Gravestorm. That was my Maralen of the Mornsong deck. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a comment below and tell me what you think. Also, check me out on MTGSalvation and on MTGFanatic.